Good afternoon and welcome to Pittsburgh City Council's Committee on Hearings, and we have today the equipment leasing and several interviews for directorships. And so, Madam Clerk, will you read the purpose of these first two interviews?
Sure. Bill 296, resolution appointing Lisa Frank as a board member of the Equipment Leasing Authority for a term to expire on March 31st, 2023. Chief Frank will serve the remainder of the term for a seat vacated by Jennifer Prasuti, who resigned. Bill 297, resolution appointing Chris Hornstein as a board member of the Equipment Leasing Authority for a term to expire on April 30th, 2027.
Thank you. And we'll begin with you, Director Frank, if you want to say a few words about yourself and what you'll bring to the position, what you hope to bring, and then we'll go with you, Director Hornstein. Okay?
Sure. And thanks to everybody for
Thank you.
the work of making sure
First
that
time
we
here,
have,
right?
Chief,
yes,
is it
we
Chief?
have an
Chief
ELA
Frank?
and Councilman Kraus for serving so long on the ELA. I think Chris, who we're going to talk to, and I know Lee, who has already been appointed within operations. I'm of course the operating officer. Do most of the purchasing. We've got a lot of our budget tied up there. It's really important to our residents that our public safety folks, that our DPW folks, and also our POI folks to get the services that they need, that the vehicles are reliable, and that we're managing the fleet in a way that is affordable for them. So that's really what I'm hoping to do there, is to understand how we have a very strong asset management program, how we're creating a fleet that is where the age of it, or the median age of it is, thank you, is right, and so we're not finding ourselves in places where we just don't have vehicles to do the work, and that we're trying to do that in a way that's affordable. So I guess I want to do that because I feel like it's my job.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Acting Director Chris Hornstein of Public Works. So just to echo what Lisa said, I think that's critical asset management service for the fleet. It's just vital to the city across all of the services that we deliver. And so, having what I hope to bring to the table is not just, sound fiscal management, but also sound operational management procedures to help ensure all our departments and bureaus have, the necessary equipment, in accordance with what they need to accomplish.
Thank you. And I want to say that we are joined by our previous president, Councilman Kraus, Councilman Wilson, and Councilwoman Gross is joining us online. And with that said, do we have any questions from members?
Yeah, can I please?
Yes, you actually served on the equipment leasing previously, right?
Did I ever?
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot, a lot of balls to keep in the air, because there's a lot of departments that depend on the Equipment Leasing Authority for the vehicles that are necessary to perform the jobs they need to perform. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm almost embarrassed I'm going to ask this question, but both of your positions are bylaw positions, right? You sit there formally because you are the Chief of Operations. You sit on Equipment Leasing Authority because you are the Director of Public Works. I believe they're bylawed into the.
No, that's not my understanding in
No?
reviewing the bylaws, no.
I believe we're the mayor's appointees.
Yes.
Yes,
His
but
appointees for those positions.
the mayor's appointees because you sit in those positions. No?
I thought not, but
You could very well be right, because the entire length that I served on Equipment Leasing Authority, it was always your positions that were the appointees that served on the board that were there. So and maybe I just made the assumption that those positions were appointed by the mayor because of the positions you held. So I could be wrong. I could be. Wouldn't be the first time by any means. But so I'd just be curious
I'm looking it up for you now.
I'm sorry?
I'm looking it up for you.
Okay. I'm curious about your thoughts, just in more of a holistic sense, of a slow conversion into electric vehicles and, carbon reduction and all those kinds of things. I was very much a tree hugger back in 1972 when we were advocating for carbon reduction and, electric vehicles. And it took 50 years, but it appears very much to be the way of the future because the economics appear to be working, and so I imagine that long past the time I'll be here, we will continue a conversion into more environmentally friendly vehicles. So I'd just be curious, both of your thoughts on the transition.
I think that's right. I think that's the future. I think at some point in the future, that's what manufacturers are going to be manufacturing. So I think we do want to continue the conversion. I think we have to make sure that we're keeping up with it in terms of like, where can we charge these vehicles? We also have to, convert our own kind of fueling, put it that way, in that way. So making a plan, I think, that lets us step into that. They're also more expensive, so we're going to have to manage that transition and sort of keep a balance so that we continue to do the work as we're making that transition. But personally, I think the transition is the future. We're going to have to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, it is. Director?
Yeah, so I agree that the transition to an electrified fleet is the future. I would buttress that against, the infrastructure required to do that. We need to have a thoughtful plan that will take time. There's still some uncertainty as to, the maintenance requirements of electric vehicles because, as we use them in our fleet, not like our private residents, we have larger vehicles. So there are concerns there, that we need to monitor as we kind of move towards a greener fleet. Also, we know we need to electrify our fleet, but we also can't sacrifice that for operational readiness.
Right,
for the
agreed.
purpose. So, just coming to the table with realizing that those things are all important, and learning to balance that is, what I see as the best path forward.
Balance is the key to everything, isn't it, in some way, shape, or form? Trying to find it. Did you find it, Councilwoman? Curious.
Well, I can't open it on my phone.
Okay. Then, in terms of, how do I want to say this, rotating the fleet in such a way that we don't come up short in all things at all times is, one of the balls we're constantly keeping up in the air. So I'm just curious about your thoughts and, because everyone's going to argue, we need this vehicle and we need it right now and, and don't give it to them, I need it and so forth and so on. But the key is to make sure that the fleet doesn't age out all at one time and that it ebbs and flows in a responsible manner. So I'm just curious, about your thoughts about that as well.
That sort of is my thought about that. I mean,
Yeah.
and I haven't been through a budgeting or a purchasing round, so I can only imagine what those conversations are like. But I do think that is going to be the trick, is to understand, whose vehicles look like what, where is your biggest worst, where do you have an opportunity to make an investment, what is it the residents are counting on us to get done. And I imagine that it's like everything else in the city, that we're doing it under, financial constraints that make all those choices pretty difficult and often a little bit painful. But I think that is, again, a place where you just have to use the word balance and try to get there.
Director, thoughts?
Yeah. Just to kind of add to what Chief Frank was saying, I think also it's imperative that, we're working with departments to consider all of our alternatives. Ownership isn't the only alternative, correct? Like there are
Agreed.
And so, I think really we need to look at our, working with departments on the operational readiness piece to figure out, where we have flexibility to consider other financing mechanisms to both augment our fleet, but also be efficient with the dollar, and to help us get to that position of, optimum operational readiness.
God, I hate to do this. I'm going to do it just briefly. Oh, that's the bylaws. You can't see that? You can't read that on
I
your phone?
can't read that with my
Really?
glasses on.
read them.
You do?
I looked up the bylaws and read them, Madam President.
Did you? Good. Okay, you can tell us that.
Yeah.
And it just says there are 3 seats appointed by the mayor and 2 seats appointed by the city council, and it does not describe
It doesn't
any,
define them.
ex officio or any, by status.
Gotcha. Thank you, Councilwoman. So I hate to get on this road, and I promise I will keep it brief, but I understand there will be electric charging stations at the new 4th Division Public Works facility.
That's correct. Yes, they are planned. They won't be part of the package, but yes, this first go around of construction, but they are planned to receive those as well. Yes.
And when might one expect that to be? When might one expect that to be operational, Director?
Oh, yes, I know it's a popular topic of conversation. Latest updates are, as we went through the finalizing our design process with our vendors, we discovered mine shaft. This kind of forced us to do some additional engineering that wasn't anticipated. That will drive some additional cost as to be yet to be determined, but it has put us a little bit behind. We're pressing forward as fast as we can to, get construction started just as soon as possible. I'm waiting for the design team to kind of give me an updated sense of when that would begin.
So is it possible we might push back the October date for it to be operational, or at least
I think so.
functionally
Yeah,
operational?
yeah. I think so because again, we're in COVID supply chain issues. Obviously, we'll go through a city, good public bid construction for the construction contract itself. So, wanting to make sure that everything is just safe, and once construction happens, it's going clockwork. I think it's safe to say that we're going to have to push back that timeline a little bit. Yes.
I'll ask him a second time. That's all the questions I have. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Councilman Wilson? And Councilwoman Gross next.
Madam President?
Yeah, after Councilman Wilson, then Councilwoman Gross. Thank you.
All right, thank you for being here. I just wanted to try to understand the roles that we're all, expected to play within how the Equipment and Leasing Authority would work. So would have a seat on the board. There's council, there's the mayor, there's directors. How do we make decisions? I just want to make sure we're all in line with what the rules are. How do we make decisions on, when we would purchase, what we will purchase? Is there direction from the directors? Is it just everything all at once? I've seen at council where they literally just edit the budget to include another EMS vehicle. Does that then prompt ELA to say, okay, we're gonna purchase that vehicle now? I mean, how are things considered? Are you ready for those decisions?
I consulted a little bit with Brandon, a little bit with Kim, just to try to understand these processes myself. What I understand is it's actually not unlike the rest of the budget process, although the ELA is a separate authority. But Brandon consults with directors, consults with council, constructs a budget in the way that really any other part of government constructs a budget, through consultation, and then everybody can look at it and people tinker with it or do what they have to do with it, and then it's passed. And then there are occasions, as there are in any other part of the budget, where that gets amended in the middle of the year because there's an emergency or something like that. But it's not really, functionally speaking, an extraordinary process, even though the authority is not city government per se.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Those decisions on what types, how much, those are all vetted through the normal capital budget process in consultation with directors, with council. And so, as far as the decision-making prowess of the ELA, I think it's more just like, advice, consultation to add to the process, as well as just the functional piece of managing the money and make sure that there's good principal accounting and good management happening within that.
So in your time as acting director, would you be in direct contact with Brandon?
Absolutely.
About, okay.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of just doing this for,
No, on all-
I figured that's what's going on.
Yeah,
but,
that is
we talk
absolutely
about it, but I wanted to just kind of talk more about, simplifying what's actually going to take place here. So,
Yeah, what actually takes place is, the ELA board is having a meeting to review, various aspects that are under their peer review, relates to both the maintenance contract and the purchase of vehicles. So, Brandon will give updates to them, but also to the, as acting director, I was getting those updates as well. We had consultation last year in the capital budget process in terms of, what types of vehicles, this is what we can do, this is what we cannot do. Updates on the procurement process, challenges within the supply chain. All those conversations happen both with the ELA board and with, directors
Okay.
as well.
And some of it's in the operating budget. The police vehicles are in, because they don't
Right.
last 5 years, are in the operating budget. So it's on, both sides of the budget,
Right.
capital and operating.
and so far we haven't included like electrified bicycles into Like that's not part of
not to my knowledge.
equipment
no, not to my
leasing
knowledge.
authority, yeah. What about expansion? Are there other departments that are gonna need expanded? I know that I saw on the budget recently, I'm sorry, there was like a, it wasn't a transfer, it was on their, not P cards either. From OCHS, I think they were using their own vehicles, and we were reimbursing for mileage or something. So what, is there anything like that? Like, is there the future of current employees that may receive a vehicle to do their job?
We've applied for an earmark to stand up a post-overdose recovery team that would have some vehicles in it, and some separate funding for that. And I imagine we would run those purchases through the ELA. I hadn't really thought about it that far. We don't have the earmark yet, but that's the one place where I know of that we're
Okay.
contemplating vehicles for the Office of Community Health and Safety.
Okay, great. Yeah, typically when things come over in the, whether paid on a P card, so I'm like always trying to think about what's the future of this. We're going to keep doing it this way? Is there going to be, so,
Right.
whenever I saw like purchase for, or I can't remember what the line item said, but basically people were using their own vehicles. We were trying to reimburse in some way.
Yeah, and I have some of that in the Department of Public Works currently.
Okay.
That I'm aware of, and, again, that becomes a question of where I ask departments to consider, alternative means to ownership, whether it's lease, whether it's, asking employees to use private vehicles where it's appropriate. Those are all mechanisms that can be, we would ask departments to bring that, if there was a request for new additional vehicles, we would ask departments to bring that information to the ELA for consideration when we're crafting the budget, just to make sure that we can vet all the infrastructure needs that might be needed.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks for serving, and thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councilman. And Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam President. I have an extraordinary amount of background noise here, so I'm not sure if you all can hear me. And I also want to say it's difficult here at home, maybe because of my background noise, but I think the microphones are a little fussy in chambers. It's especially hard to hear Director Hornstein and Chief Frank on our end. I can hear the members, maybe because members are used to the microphones in chambers. Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And Madam President, are we to keep our questions to the ELA board?
Yes, please.
Okay, just
thank you.
checking. I wasn't sure your order for today. So I just want to thank Director Hornstein and Chief Frank for being here, for being and willing to be in these positions. But I do have some specific ELA questions that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about. The first one is the contract for CNG, compressed natural gas trucks that were purchased. I think the contract was in 2021, if it was early 2021 or late 2020, I can't remember. And it included council voting for a $300,000 contract that would lease a refueling station in order that we buy the trucks fueled by compressed natural gas. And it brought the cost per truck up to higher even than diesel, for sure, but higher than electric, I believe. And we had the very direct discussion in chambers about whether or not electric waste haulers and recycling trucks were ready on the market and why weren't we buying those. I ended up voting no on the CNG allocation. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are about that part of the fleet. And even if you know, what is the status of that contract to lease a refueling station specifically for CNG? And whether we're moving directions now towards electric instead.
And these are all your vehicles, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I can confirm that we
Chris, go
do.
first.
Okay, thank you. I can confirm that we do have the CNG vehicles, and that there is a refueling station down at Environmental Services to support them. As to the status of the contract, I would have to defer that to Brandon Walton. I'm just not familiar with it that much, but I know that the vehicles are operational, so I can only assume that the contract's in place.
But we are buying some electric vehicles for EVS this year, I believe.
That's correct, yes.
Yes.
Something's buzzing low. Are you in favor of benching the CNG program and going instead with electric?
I'm in favor of evaluating the CNG program to see how effective it is. We've purchased the vehicles, we have the contract. It takes time, it takes years to evaluate that type of program. In the meantime, I do think it's just sound practice to expand, the fleet ownership to electric vehicles as well and compare those things against each other.
So, Chief Frank?
Well, I guess I'd say the same thing. I'm not actually aware of the age of those vehicles, the gas vehicles, and so I don't know where we are in their life cycle. So I would like to understand more about them. I think, the general direction that we would like to wind up in is to have our vehicles, we'd like to electrify the fleet, and we won't get there all in one day, because we can't up and buy entirely new vehicles all in one day. And we don't actually have the facility yet to even keep them rolling yet, because we have to keep pace with with the charging infrastructure. So I guess I would put these in the same category as really any other vehicle. What's the plan for kind of moving in the direction? If they're brand new and they're working pretty good, we're probably not going to retire them tomorrow. But I actually don't know. I don't know where we are in the process there.
Thank you. Can either of you, and I look forward to continuing that conversation and seeing, as you say, what the performance is of the CNG, kind of what is the kind of future for those vehicles in our fleet, and weighing the costs and benefits, as you both mentioned. I do notice that the Infrastructure and Jobs Act specifically provides $7.5 billion for alternative fuel corridors, but also to build out a national network of electric vehicle charging stations. Do you know, or can you speak to what will the ELA's role be in identifying those opportunities? Or is that all in grants management in our office and management and budget?
I don't know that it's quite that distinct. I think what we have is a conversation going on about that really is crossing a lot of those boundaries. So there's a work group, I guess I would call it, that includes DOMI and planning and, obviously grants and folks in the, who think about the budgeting. And then sort of by default, some of those people connect with the ELA because Chris is there and I'm kind of sort of there. So I think we're trying to have a robust conversation about that to make sure that we are taking advantage of the grant, getting the infrastructure built, and then seeing what that means in terms of, does that change anything about the speed with which we could electrify our fleet? Or is the speed with which we need to electrify our fleet going to drive how and where we think about those? But I think we're trying to have a conversation that really crosses those borders so that we get it right.
Dr. Hornstein?
I just simply concur with everything Chief Frank said. That's my understanding as well.
Thank you. I've said before at the city council table that we should all be thinking, including council members, right, about where we have capacity in our entire operating budget and our entire organizational chart, because this is not these are not normal times, and this is not a normal year, and this massive amount of federal funds that are competitive funds, right, that we need to make sure that we're staffing out and resourcing the capacity for looking for these opportunities, going for these opportunities. It's a lot of work, grant writing. I've done my own share of grant writing in my life, and it's a full-time job that usually involves staying up to midnight and meeting really tough deadlines. And that we want to make sure that, if we have a grants office that is staffed out at a kind of normal year level, that maybe we need additional staffing so that we can be sure that we're not missing opportunities just for our own lack of assigning enough resources, enough people resources to the task. And that's probably going to mean coordinating with various different departments, from, broadband to electrification to bridges. There's a lot of, a wide gamut of different types of infrastructure that involve different functions in our org chart that these grants people, if we're tasking them with this job, that they'll need the time, enough people hours in that department to coordinate with all the various departments so that we can chase down as many dollars as we can. So thank you. I think, again, we should keep this in front of us. This is a time-limited opportunity, and it's a highly competitive national opportunity for all of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act dollars, as I am understanding it, as I'm researching it. So I'd be happy to talk more with you about that.
Can I tell you something that I'm not sure, I don't know if you're aware, but just yesterday, we had a new person start in the grants office. And that person is focused on sort of post-award and everything that has to happen once you've received a grant and the compliance and the reports to the funders to free up the other folks in the grant office to be doing exactly what you're describing. I wasn't sure if you knew that, but it's exciting to.
Did not know that, and that was, I think, I applaud you because it is, the reporting can consume most or all of your time in a grants management position and keep you from doing the grant seeking. So yeah, well done. I appreciate that. That's all I have for ELA, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And Councilman Kraus, you had one follow-up?
I just have one question to ask that I don't believe you can answer, but it got me, it just got me to thinking while we were having the discussion with the councilwoman, and we had sort of started this conversation around the vernacular of balance, and that balance is always a good thing. So with the increased demand on electric vehicles, whether they be commercial or private, even over the next 10 to 15 to even 20 years as we transition to this, and thinking about how delicate the power grids are in this nation at this point in time, is it necessarily wise to put all of our eggs in one basket and totally electrify a fleet when perhaps the balance of a fleet between natural gas and electric could buy us options on both sides? I can't imagine that. I mean, we love our cars. God knows we love our cars. And as this takes hold and the demand on the grid increases over the next decade or two, I mean, where could that possibly leave us in our ability to be able to operate our fleet in brownouts and blackouts and those kinds of situations? Just something to think about.
I think they got a
And
lot
we
to
will.
think about.
It's a
Yeah, that is a
scary
good
thing
point.
to think about.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. That's a good point. Thank you, Councilman. And for myself, I just have a few questions. A while back, we looked at SWAT, was saying that when they come in on their own vehicles. And I don't know if that's still the case, but they had asked for us to allocate, for them to be able to have the opportunity to use city vehicles. And I don't know if that's something that they're still looking into or not, but if so, I'd like to know a little bit more about it. And so if you get a chance, when you get on there, please look into that a little bit. It's not fair for me to ask you a lot of questions since you're not on there yet, but that was one of the things. And I think if they had a city marked vehicle, it might calm some of the people down when they fly into a place to get the SWAT vehicle, because that's what we had heard the biggest concern was in Elliott, was when we were trying to make the Stevens School Building the alternative place for the police. People were saying, cars are flying in and out of here. What was the police? They said half the time it's the police. Well, they fly in on their own vehicles because they're coming to the SWAT truck. So that was something they asked about a long time ago, so I just want to put that out there. The other thing I want to know is about the fire vehicles. We've heard a lot of comments about the fire vehicles, the trucks, and how there's there was one company they were going with, another company they decided to go with, that the vehicles were probably 30,000 or 40,000 more per vehicle. And has that transaction happened? Has it already occurred, do you know?
No, no one, I'm not sure I even understand exactly how we got into the spot we got into, but we got into a spot where we had a bid from a supplier that had been accepted that didn't match the specs of the fire department. And so there was a lot of speculation about what got missed there and where did it go wrong and so on and so forth. But we nonetheless had that predicament where we were on the verge of purchasing trucks that didn't actually meet the needs of our fire department. We were luckily able to cancel that contract without any penalty at all, and don't know if we've done it or if we're close to doing it, but to essentially just reissue the, ask for bids that are the right specifications, that have been sort of checked by the chief of police and have been, the firefighters and the union had a chance to look at it. It's like, yes, this is the truck we want. Now we can put it out and anticipate that we'll get more than one reply to that, and then we can purchase the right trucks at the right price.
So they're not yet purchased. Okay, because I had heard two different stories about this, two different sides, and that there was a lot going on, and that they did meet the specs. And so I'd like to see some of those, any kind of emails back and forth about the vehicles, because I'm curious about what really transpired there, and and why we were willing to spend more if it did meet the spec. If it didn't, then that's a whole different story. So I think there's just a little bit of concern there I'd like to look into a little bit more. But that brings me to my next point, is that you're replacing Jennifer Pursuti, and I think it's great to have you on there, first of all. But I worry because Bill Urbanik is also retiring and leaving. So that's two of the finance people that were on there that will be gone. So I'm wondering who will be on there that will fill that void, because one of the things I think they're good at is making sure that we're doing things appropriately according to the financial end of it, at least. Do you think there's anyone on there that could fill that void, or is it something that maybe we need to look at down the road? Or even somebody from law, would be good to have.
Well, there is a solicitor for the
Okay,
LA
good.
board,
Okay, good.
although he passed recently, if I understand.
Was he around when all this was happening with the vehicles?
But I believe he's been replaced. I remember when it happened, and we did some work to figure out what the requirements would be for a solicitor for the ELA, and I'm almost certain that we have one.
Yes, I'm concerned we're losing some of that institutional knowledge and
Right.
people that might know some of that. So could you?
Right.
talk
It's a good question to ask. I think, I do think we have some good supports around us. Brandon, obviously. I've learned a lot from Kim, who I think will be very helpful to
Is
us.
Kim on there?
Kim Osterman,
Okay.
forgive me, I can't
Please.
give a title to Kim other than it's Kim. She's been there forever, and amazing talent and wealth of knowledge.
Okay. And what
Kim
could you just
Osterman,
tell me what role she plays with the equipment leasing?
I think she's assigned to it, and
okay.
so she,
That- I
makes
didn't
sure
serve on
that
this, I'd
everything
like
is,
to know.
and make sure that everything is in order, and that, we're
Provides administrative support
support.
to the
Okay.
board.
And has been doing that
And
for
is
some
an
time. I think is a
absolute
deep.
wealth of knowledge.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, just amazing.
And so are the two of you, but in different ways. So you're bringing new stuff to the table, so it's good. But that's it for me. Does anybody else have any further questions? I want to thank you both for your willingness. So do you have another question?
Yeah, I don't know if it's for
Councilman Cross, did you see
today,
him
but
say
it was
he has
kind of
another
part of
question?
my.
But he always has another question.
Well, I mean, the questions I have, that's, I guess, the different specs that came in, that's kind of right in line with, what I was trying to get to was, so, I'm interested in that because does the board review the specs before we come under contract? I mean, you're not on the board yet, but those are my questions
I'm
for the
honestly not sure what
current
happened.
board.
I really am not. I just know we landed in a place where Chief Jones was concerned that what we got back was not, that it was going to require a lot of changes. And so essentially we would be going out for bid again because I don't know, there were 93 things, I think, that were not entirely correct. And so it just seems simpler to say, let's just get this all kind of in order. Everybody's got their eyes on it now. We good now. Let's go. It just seemed like a simpler way to go. But I don't exactly
Yeah,
know.
I guess I'm curious on how long
I don't
that
think it's
process
something
already
that,
took to get to that point. Like that seems like the bread and butter of what we're
I don't think it
trying
happens
to do
all the
at the
time.
at the Equipment Leasing Authority.
I think
Yeah.
we just had a,
Okay, well, I'm interested in
kerfuffle
that.
there.
I'll follow up on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. And you got a text message from
Yeah.
Jake Pollock,
Yeah.
Director Pollock,
Oh.
who's
Director
listening
Pollock
to us.
is
So thank
watching.
you, Director,
Budget Administrator is the official
that's the
title.
title.
for
Thank you.
Kim
Yeah.
Osterman, just so the public knows what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Okay.
She's just such an institution on the board. I never quite knew the title, but only that, she holds us all together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so we're looking forward to working with you, continue work with both of you. Thank you very much for your willingness to serve, and I'm sure you're going to do a great job. Thank you. And Director, do you want to stay for the next interview?
Sure,
Dr.
happy to
Hornstein?
stay for the next
Okay,
one.
thank you.
No
The
more
next
break.
one is you.
Thanks, Chief.
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Sure. Are we doing all directors at once or individually?
Do you want to do individually?
It's your call. I'll
What do you-
do
how do you
whatever
guys want?
I'd do 'em everybody at once, just that.
Okay, let's try to get this moving.
Okay.
And Madam Clerk, I'm sorry, tell them first your name for the public, and then say, thank you. Say it to the mic.
Ashley Robinson.
Thank you, is our clerk for today. And Ashley, could you please read the purpose of the next interview, which is Director Hornstein?
Bill 293, resolution appointing Chris Hornstein as Director of the Department of Public Works. You want me to read all three of them?
That's it, that's good. Yeah, we're going to do them one at a time.
Okay.
Thank you. Give them their moment. This is a good moment. Wait till you're on TV next few times. It won't be. Director, do you want to say a few things? I want to first thank you for the time you have been serving as an acting director. And with that said, do you want to make a few comments?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It'd be a pleasure to serve in the role. In the little over, 4.5 years that I've been here at the city, I've really grown to love the people that work here and the work that they do. And as, acting director, I've gotten to know even more of, the folks behind the scenes in public works that I wasn't, previously so engaged with. And it's just, it is awe-inspiring, and it blows my mind, like the dedication that they have every day to kind of go out there and sometimes not often acknowledged unsafe and dangerous conditions. And I can't say enough about, the opportunity to support those folks in their work to support citizens of the city.
Thank you, Director. Is there any members of council that have
Got
any
a few
questions?
pages.
Yeah, Councilman,
You
Councilman
wanna go
Wilson,
first
did you
this
raise?
time? You're welcome to. Just keep
Is
it brief.
Councilman Gross is up to?
Yeah. Well,
And the next we'll let Councilman Gross go first, next
yeah,
round. Okay.
well, it was good to, already chat about some stuff, meet previously about how to improve some of the maintenance that happens in our parks. How do you foresee the parks trust fund, in the future? Like, do you see that as like a fund that we would continually use to support parks in the way of facility improvements? Like, what would be your plan in terms of DPW? What would be your plan on how to use those funds?
Oh, well, I mean, I've kind of already, outlined that plan. I'm happy to brief you on offline on some of the more details, but, broadly, the Parks Tax Trust Fund intended to support parks directly. We do that in 3 ways. One is by, investing in vehicles and equipment that maintain parks. The second is by investing in additional staff to help maintain parks, whether those be laborers, whether those be, associate project managers or other staff types that are directly involved with parks. And then, the third way is, via capital investment in our parks. And so, we've, as part of my plan, I've contemplated both, what we call what I consider capital sustainment, capital maintenance, which are, articles like replacing a playground, things that we should be doing as just a matter of course because we have so many playgrounds and they need to be replaced. And then the other one is, investing in those, some of those larger scale things that come along where we can get, a direct benefit by making a few changes to the park to the public's benefit.
Okay. How many, and I think you were acting director during this part, how many increased amount of, how many extra employees or additional employees did we hire through the parks tax?
I mean, well, the hiring is still ongoing.
I'm
but-
sorry, I should say the trust fund.
The trust fund, yes. Through the trust fund, budgeted for this year, I believe was 11. I mean, I don't have the final figures in front of me, but I believe we've staffed at least 9 of those positions.
Okay. The number we've been talking about was close to 40, like
Yes, it did.
36,
Yeah,
I
but there's a-
recall. Are we going to get to that?
That is the plan is
Would
outlined.
that be through your department?
Yes.
Okay.
And in conjunction with the Department of Parks and Rec, we would work together on those issues. But yes, there's there's a transition plan to that. Especially when we're talking about adding additional laborers, we need to consider making sure that they have the vehicles and equipment necessary to perform that work. So, and the necessary leadership in place to do that as well. So. The plan contemplates that as the next couple of years as a transition period to getting to that, end state of roughly 40 to 45.
So we see that as more laborers?
I think it's a healthy cross section of a bunch of different positions. Some project management, some laborers, some foremen, certainly, coordinator positions, skilled laborers, things associated with the public pools as well.
Okay. I know we've already been talking about this, but I'll just, state this, that, I'm looking forward to what we can do for Riverview Park in terms of supporting that park. Obviously, it's plagued by a lot of landslides, 10 to my count. That's, I guess, I'm sure you and Domi work hand in hand with as that's going to move forward. But just, we got, public works facility, so I'm looking forward to improving that park as much as possible. It means a lot to our residents, and so my main point here is I just want to say, as the new parks director, as the new DPW director, that they have a lot of involvement in our parks. I know people don't, they think maybe Parks and Rec are because they have the park's name, but DPW is the entity that does all the work in our parks. So I'm looking forward to trying. We've already been discussing this, how to, fill the gap in some of how, who's keeping the checklist on what needs done, and then also, how we can have someone that's public facing. Is that someone that already works there, or is that someone that, we can create something so that really someone's going to bring us all together, so that they make sure that our parks are thriving. So
I'm very excited to work with you on all of those things.
Okay,
I think those would be great improvements to the benefit, not just of Riverview Park, where we all agree that, there a lot of care and concern is needed, but just, to the broader issue of parks in general.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilwoman Gross, going to go
Councilwoman
next?
Gross, please.
Thank you. I was waiting to be called. I wasn't sure what was going on in chambers. Director, thank you for serving as interim director, and thank you for moving into the role as director. I'm very supportive of your work and I'm really appreciative. But it occurs to me that we didn't kind of recap for the public all of the things that DPW does, which is quite a bit. And as Councilman Wilson just reminded us, right? So we've got environmental services, we've got all facilities, right? So city county building and down to like concession stands and dugouts. And then parks maintenance, roads. Am I forgetting any of the buckets that are covered under the duties of DPW?
There's some equipment maintenance that also happens within the department as well. That's kind of outside the purview of the Equipment Leasing Authority and Fleet Vehicle Services. But
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I have to say that I don't remember ever seeing your resume before. And so what I didn't maybe realize is that you have extensive kind of planning experience. It's not city planning per se, but would you want to speak to that for a minute? Because it just really struck me on your resume.
Sure. A lot of planning experience in my previous employer, Atkins, S&C Loveland. That work was primarily with the Department of Defense, Department of Energy. We would do planning, design, and in a few instances, construction management of facilities for those folks. Following their prescribed program that those folks have. And when I came to the city, I brought some of that knowledge base here with me, applied some of those principles, good practical principles on how to organize, your asset management. And so that brings cost, that brings process and procedure. So I'm happy to bring that experience here to bear as well.
Thank you. I'm gonna say something I've said often at the council table in various ways. I've certainly said it a lot when we were at PWSA, or when I was at PWSA, is that, I said a little bit in the ELA discussion, these are not our normal times for the city. We're not talking about our kind of like normal 10-year maintenance cycle. We all know, because bridges have started falling down. I just had a set of city steps fall down in my district. We have, Councilman Wilson has 10 landslides in just one city park. I have multiple landslides. This is a time when we're actually rebuilding. And some of these things are kind of 100-year assets. And so we're rebuilding in a way for the next 100 years. And so that I'm really happy that you have this skill set of making a complete asset management, not just asset management plan, but really even asset building plan. I keep saying we should be thinking in terms of building almost new, right? We shouldn't just constrain our thinking to replacing what already exists, because the city has changed so much. And then because we didn't do so much asset management for decades, many decades. In some cases, there are assets that are 50 years beyond their life cycle, that both underground, which isn't your job directly, but we have to keep in mind what the utilities are doing underground, and then coordinate it and plan it with the things that we want to see above ground and what our neighborhoods are asking us for, so that we don't pay for the same spot of the city 3, 4, 5 times, because different projects are being done there. So if I just want to let you respond to those thoughts.
There's a lot to respond to there. I think your intuitions, Councilwoman, are correct. With the deferred maintenance and the city, I want to be clear for everybody listening that the city's not in a unique position when it comes to deferred maintenance. This is something that's plaguing our nation. It plagues the assets that our federal government owns. It plagues other cities across the country, probably globally as well. So in terms of principles, when you bring up the issue of construction and rebuilding, it's kind of fascinating to me, because I think one of the things that oft gets lost, and why I like to bring the focus of asset management is because while you are contemplating those decisions, for the safety of your citizens, you still need to maintain and sustain what you have, while you contemplate what those changes could be. So while disasters do happen and some fortunate situations have occurred in the recent years, and they might provide what might be viewed as a perspective of opportunity. Sometimes after the fact, opportunity was missed because you didn't identify where you could have made significant changes, and so you're forced, because of disaster, to respond to a situation that doesn't give you adequate time as a council, as a government, as a citizenry to contemplate what those changes could be. So those are all principles that you roll into asset management. I'm hopefully, that's kind of a broad discussion point. I can certainly feel the citizenship's pain. I think that the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is bringing great thought to bear on, some of your other concerns that you noted regarding, the repaving of streets 3, 4, 5 times. I'm a citizen myself. Nobody likes that. As I was trying to drive around the city yesterday for, various site visits, it's construction's an active thing. It's the summertime. It's part of the city. It's part of where we are. But that's, hopefully perceived as a good thing at the end of the day.
So, right, so we definitely have learned our lessons and it's all something we can see directly, that is more DOME related because it's in the right of way, that utilities, dig up a street we finally paved that we hadn't paved for 40 years. That's incredibly frustrating. Or a street is redone by People's Gas because the line was 100 years old. You don't want there to be dangerous gas pipelines. But then a year later, another utility comes up, like PWSA, and decides to change their 100-year-old lines that they didn't do the year before. But that same thinking is what we should be also, as a council and with DPW, thinking through for our other city facilities, including parks, so the things outside of the right-of-way, where we have to coordinate with whatever stormwater plans that PWSA comes up with, because the Alka Sand projects aren't the only thing happening. We do have those as well on the riverfronts, but then there will be stormwater projects that are moved forward at PWSA. And where do those provide, and none of us have a crystal ball now, but we should be asking ourselves when those come up, what is our opportunity to coordinate with other improvements that our neighborhoods would like to see, or how can this benefit ourselves? And so that kind of, instead of calling it utility coordination, calling it like asset coordination, right? We don't live on separate planets. This actually is just the same place with the same constituents and customers. So it's, for example, a project at Heth's run in Highland Park has been long in the planning stages, but we haven't had implementation. And you and I have talked about it a little bit. There's opportunity for both stormwater capture, but also park improvements, that trail building, bioremediation. It's complicated. There's lots of stakeholders and moving parts, but I'm glad to see that skill set on your resume. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that it's been wonderful working with you to do even tiny projects like the City Farms projects that I've been supporting now for almost more than 2 years, in just responding to the community's requests to create community gardens on public property. I said, I'm happy to support these requests. It's, sometimes a community wants a basketball court, sometimes they want a tennis ball court, sometimes they want a pickleball court, and we respond, not, every day, but on a cycle to shifting the facilities that we provide in our public parks. So I just wanted to thank you for your willingness to respond and help support those requests.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other members?
Yeah, just briefly. I really have more remarks than I do questions. I don't know a better way to say it. I just like your style. You're really hands-on. You're very responsive. I hate to say that I have a sell for you, but it just I call and you're there, and whatever, as long as it's within reason and something that is important to me or to constituency, you're just there to get it handled, and you handle it quickly and professionally. So excuse me, I don't think I could ask really for much more. You really bring a professionalism to the position that I don't know that I've experienced in the past. And maybe that's, as the councilwoman referenced, your resume and the background that you bring with you that helps to really round you out in that position. But I'm more than happy to vote your confirmation, and you'll pay for it.
Well, thank you, I guess, for your support.
No, it's a pleasure to work with you, Director. Thank you.
Pleasure to work
Thanks.
with you as well, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And for me, I just want to say, where do you live?
I live in the Banksville neighborhood.
District 2, that's right. So, thank you, in Banksville. But I just want to say, I think that we've had some really amazing directors over the years, and I don't want to diminish the work that they've done for the city over the years. A lot of them came up through the ranks, and you and I have had those conversations about, when it come time for supervisors, I want to see them, receive their paychecks that we allocate, or the bonuses, or whatever it is the council puts in for the supervisors or whatever. Because I feel like a lot of them have put their time in, whether it's, a lot of us come in here and we're making the salary we're going to make, or the top dollar immediately just from coming in off the street. A lot of these people worked their way up and started making those. And so I don't want to ever say how, I don't think we can underestimate how important our DPW crews really are. They're on the ground doing things every day in the communities, talking to people, helping out. So I want to first say it was important to me that they appreciated you. And when I heard that from the workers and from the crews, I'll be honest, because at first I was like, I didn't care where you lived. I was not going to be a fan. I wanted it to be somebody who came through the ranks, the same as the others. But I think that you have made them feel so comfortable. So I want to say that I think your management skills and your ability to make the crews feel as a part of the team and respecting them for what they do has really gone a long way. And my comfort level, and I think with a lot of other people. So I want to start with that. But I also want to say, I think you and I have discussed this. I've been seeing a lot of projects in the city being delayed and stalled, and it's becoming concerning because it's not just, I'm starting to talk to other members, and they're starting to have some of the same things. One of the things I heard was stalled is possibly the 4th Division again. And I just, I don't know if it is, or, certainly or not, but I don't want to even discuss it today. I just want to say, I think we need to get a handle on why all these delays are starting to occur. Because it is a concern to not only us but to our residents, and so to make sure that that as we're certain things are starting to stall, I want to know what is moving forward and what are these projects that were already things that we worked on, are there things already on the books for City Council, are there new projects coming in and we're getting those done and that's why the others are getting on the back burner. I just want to make sure that what we promised our residents is being delivered and as close to the time as possible. So I just want to say that. And I want to work with everyone on getting that done. I think the administration probably would feel the same way. Everybody would probably want to get the jobs done that people are promised. But that 4th Division is hugely important to Southwest Pittsburgh. With that said, the other thing, and I think it's for me to mostly discuss with HR, is you and I talked about someone who had an application in. They tested positive for marijuana. But here we are saying it's, something that we, decriminalized, but yet here we are penalizing people who come in with a medical marijuana card sometimes. So I just want to make sure that we have some clear guidelines that we're offering to our residents. I don't think that we want to turn people away that we're saying let's decriminalize it. And some people are saying legalize it. And we're saying you can't work because you tested positive. So I think we need to get on the same page. That's all I want to say. And I know that doesn't come from you. Is there anything you want to add that you think that you'll be able to bring to this position, or anything that you want to change?
I mean, I think there's always lots of room for improvement everywhere. And that's one of the things that I like to look at, is to see how we do things. I mean, vis-a-vis your comments regarding the process around infrastructure development, it certainly is, something that is on my eye, as I stepped into the acting director role from the assistant director of facilities, bandwidth being what it is, I just wasn't able to give that part of the process probably the proper attention it deserves. I hope, with appointment, we can work together to, reinvigorate those conversations for the improvement of all residents. Regarding your kind words of the existing staff, I've just grown to really appreciate their knowledge and their skills around problem solving, about knowing the history, just about good people that care about each other. And if I didn't have their support, I'm not sure I'd be actually here sitting at the table, pursuing a confirmation. That part was important to me, that I support them. And so knowing that, just the knowledge that, they appreciate me and that they appreciate my support goes a long way for me, and is a great deal of motivation.
And I'm going to mention, in my district, we've also had Rob Kazarowski and Bobby Palmasina when I first was elected. And we used to have these things called Nextels. Remember those? And you could Nextel a director. I was telling you this. I mean, there would be times Bobby or Rob would call, like, it's like a walkie-talkie, tell you at 3 o'clock in the morning. If I called a director today at 3 o'clock in the morning, I think they'd have a heart attack. So I just want to say, and I do send emails at 3 o'clock in the morning, I apologize. But at the same time, I don't apologize, because we're supposed to be using those phones to serve the public, and if it happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, they want an answer at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I sometimes want to make sure directors are more, and this is an issue that we've all talked about, more responsive to council. And so I just want to know going forward that I would like to see some level of almost, I know we can't get to that level of commitment where we're telling people, because I don't even know if they make them anymore. But I want to make sure that we have that level of commitment of responding to council members. Did you want to? Somebody's calling me now for a DPW job. I swear to you, I swear. It couldn't be worse. But anyway, could you talk about that a little bit? And how?
I think the communication with council and the public at large on the large variety of things we do is honestly one of those places where I'd really like to see the department make great strides. I think it's one of the things that, with whatever you want to say, Act 47 or downsizing is probably parts of it that unfortunately maybe got cut or glossed over, and it does make it a challenge. And I mean, you certainly have my commitment to trying to respond to all of council's concerns in the best way possible. But I think there's just more consideration and maybe just a little bit of personnel there needed to help us better facilitate communications with the public on a wide variety of public works issues.
And well, I just want to say I appreciate that, and I really want to see more of that communication. And I want to be clear. I think a lot of it was started by council accepted having a spokesperson for each department, or a government relations person for each department, and that almost gave the okay, like it's okay not to respond to council. So I said to members, a mayor hires, but 5 of us can fire. And I said, and I don't want them to ever forget that, because if we don't get the responses that we need, then that we may have to send some examples. And I said, so I want people to realize they need to respond to council members and respect that we are front line with the people. We're not calling for ourselves. We're not calling because we want to just chat. We're calling because we're trying to get answers for our constituents. And so with that said, I just want to make it very clear that moving forward, I think council members want that respect, and we're going to insist that we have that. So with all members, with all the directors. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. And I do want to thank Mayor Gainey's staff, that they have been really responsive and whenever we call. So I want to thank them for that too, especially Jake and the other, even the mayor. I mean, they all answer the phones like really pretty quickly. So it's nice. But I just want to make sure that that was something we accepted that we're not going to accept anymore. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. But thank you for your work and for your willingness to take this job, and especially for moving into District 2. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Anything else for members?
Good. Thanks, Director. Appreciate you being here.
Okay. Thank you, Director. We'll put this confirmation up on Tuesday for you.
Okay.
Monday.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
double
Monday.
meetings
Monday, yeah.
Yeah.
Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Director. Thank you. Do you want to do the next two together or still separate?
Yeah, let's do the next two together.
Just for the sake of time.
I think there's more questions for the one, but he left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Bill number 294, resolution appointing Kimberly Lucas as Director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. Bill number 295, resolution appointing Catherine Vargas as Director of the Department of Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And
Afternoon. Hi.
we are joined by both of you. I want to thank you both, Director Lucas and Director Vargas. I've known Director Vargas, I say it every time she comes to the table, for a very long time. We actually worked together for a short time. And I saw how amazing she was in the community. So I'll begin with you, Director Lucas, if there's any opening statements you'd both like to make, and then we'll go to members.
Thank you. So I just want to mention how deeply honored and humbled I am to be sitting here in front of you. The mission of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is to provide the physical mobility and infrastructure so that residents and visitors of the city have the social and economic mobility that they deserve. And our number one goal in support of that mission is safety. And I can't think of a department that I could identify with and serve as deeply as that mission, and making sure that the basic right of not getting seriously injured or killed, just trying to get your basic needs met and going where you need to go. I wouldn't want to devote my life to anything else.
Thank you. Very nice. Director Vargas?
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time this afternoon. Also deeply humbled to be sitting here for this position. You know, when I joined the city, well, actually, when I moved to Pittsburgh 12 years ago to get my master's in social work, I knew for a fact that what I wanted to do, regardless of where my path would take me, is to be in service to others, and be in service in the community. And so joining the city 2.5 years ago, when I first joined the team, it was very obvious from the beginning of that experience that this is the place where I need to be. We have an amazing team of people who are out there in 50 facilities across the city, serving individuals every day. And our department, while it serves a broader community, it is hyper-focused on serving children, families, and older adults. And so, you know, when you really think about it, and I think about my role as a social worker and my belief in community service, the work of the City Parks and Recreation Department is truly that. So I'm honored to be here. I've enjoyed growing in this role over the last 2.5 years. You know, COVID hit our team pretty hard. We are still faced with challenges from that, but also a lot of potential for our department to continue to grow in the way that we serve the community.
Thank you, Director. And do we have anything from the members? And let me just first thank you both for acting for this, for the time that you happened. I'm sorry.
Gross, would you go first?
Oh, yeah,
this
Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, appreciate it, Madam
Thank you.
President. Yeah, thank you both for your service as interim directors, and I'm happy to support your appointments as permanent directors. And I think I'll just want to ask some questions to let you kind of respond and let council know about the needs for your departments. And Director Lucas, I'll start with you. There's a lot going on in our right-of-ways. And as we've been mentioning here in these interviews today, landslides, bridges falling down, steps falling down, deferred maintenance of decades. I just maybe want to give you an opportunity to let us know your thoughts about what does DOMI need in order to respond to this moment?
So I know that the sort of easy answer and the short answer is more resources. To highlight, for example, this past weekend's landslides, where I believe there were 5 or 6 unique issues that rose to my level of awareness, our cleanup total is $300,000. And that isn't even talking about stabilization efforts and wall investment or things of that nature. Our budget for the year for a rapid response and wall slope is $1 million, and now $300,000 in one weekend. So we are in a situation where the resources don't necessarily match the need, and it's not. And there, you know, I think landslides are a great example of something that we can sort of predict. You know, we know where our steep slopes are. We know where we've had historic issues, which I understand some of the issues this weekend were ones that were not brand new. But they're ones that we could anticipate increasing with climate change. And so We need more resources, and we are actively working with the mayor's office, as you heard earlier, with grants and with outside agencies to help us make sure that we're strategic and aggressive with our pursuit of external to the city funding. You may be aware that DOMI is responsible for 51%, I believe, of this year's capital budget in terms of our project delivery. And we have leveraged those external resources at a rate of beyond $1 to $1. So that means that we are leveraging $1 of city funds to more than $1 of external funding. And so we're making those strategic decisions for that money to go very far, but we need more. So that was supposed to be the short answer. The longer answer is also process, being as strategic as possible, being as efficient as possible, identifying the gaps in our data so that we are making equitable decisions and making smart decisions, as we have already started and will continue to do, so that our money is going to the highest need locations.
Yes, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I'm really happy to hear, because it is both capital budgeting, but it's also, as I've been kind of on a broken record here today, operating budget and organizational chart changes, right? I'm open to hearing from DOMI, so that we have maybe the places in the org chart that we've never had to have someone. Councilman Smith, you'll probably remember that when Councilwoman Rudiak, when she served, suggested that maybe we needed a hydrologist, a soil hydrologist. It's not anything the city of Pittsburgh has had before, but it's maybe overdue, right? It's maybe something we should be reconsidering. And so that was just an open-ended question. So I appreciate you responding to it, but it really is, I think, an opportunity for council and the department to think about, well, gosh, what are all the things we're trying to respond to, and how we staff this out right, or staffed it out correctly. And I don't want to take much more time, because I'm actually kind of running up against a deadline. So I will also ask Director Vargas, similarly, I really have appreciated working with you and your willingness to respond to our City Farms program. As I mentioned also with Director Hornstein, that Parks and Rec exists there to kind of staff out the programming and personnel needs in our parks. And this is a really important time. Councilman Smith and Councilman Coggle and I last year were very concerned about the city not being able to reopen pools and about increasing the pay scales that would make us a competitive employer, both for lifeguards and other of your seasonal and part-time needs. And it's just still, none of us expected in 2022 to still be in this global pandemic, but we see increased violence in the streets. We see an increase in mental health stress among our grown-ups, but among our kids. And this is nationwide, but we are seeing it in the city of Pittsburgh as well. And we need to keep in front of us that it's important for us to have recreation, but also safe outdoor recreation spaces. And so, again, I'll just give you a chance to respond.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Councilwoman. It's been wonderful working with you, too. I think the initiative that you spoke to, the supporting community gardens as a function of this bigger opportunity for our department, is this concept of, what COVID really showed us is how important all of our services are. Food services, food security issues, things that young people can do that are productive and supported, supports for our older adults, all critical during COVID and still critical. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing is the fact that our team is highly seasonal and highly part-time staff. So what I will say is that having higher rates for lifeguards has definitely been helpful in being able to get lifeguards, high quality lifeguards, applying for jobs to be city lifeguards this summer. I can confidently say at this point that we will be able to open more pools than we did last year, and I 100% don't know that we would be having that same conversation if we didn't do that, because our other seasonal positions are not getting much traction. So while I know that pools are incredibly important, we also have the art card, and everybody wants the art card to come out. But we are not getting applicants. We need to think about, I think, in our next budget season, about how we make sure that we have enough applicants to support the work that we do. We're not getting our part-time staff in that help at our rec centers and senior centers. It's been very challenging to be building up the team again following COVID. So that's a big challenge for us. I do feel that the administration has been extremely supportive. I know from conversations with many of you, even at our last budget hearing, that there's a lot of support behind figuring out how we can get to a point where our part-time employment is attractive, because it does help us scale our work. So especially in the summertime when the scale goes really large for what we can do. Our support for our city sports teams, our ability to have staff out there, all relies on seasonal employment. So that's a really critical and important challenge we'll continue to face. But I feel confident that there's also a lot of potential. A couple of the things that I think that we can start to think about as we work on that is, how are we supporting, more youth sports teams? How are we supporting community gardens, or, even just having a presence within our parks? We are doing programming. That is our role at city parks. But the way that our staffing is structured currently is more focused on people being tied to facilities that we run, and a little less focused on having people who are out in our parks. We do that, but again, if we had the ability to have more attractive part-time and seasonal employment opportunities, I think that this is a place where we could grow. We could do more in our park spaces, and I'm excited to see that piece of our work continue to grow. Because that is who we are. We are the programmers. And one other thing I'll say is an opportunity. Definitely, I know we have a lot of exciting capital improvements coming up. I mean, we're right at the verge of some really exciting upgrades at our recreation and senior centers, and we've seen some of those come through. I do think that as we think into the future, as we continue to invest capital money into buildings that are going to be awesome active places for our community, that we also think about, if we do want those places to be staffed with similar resources that our department brings, that we're thinking about what the operational side of that will be once those buildings come to fruition, or once those assets come to fruition. So those are, I would say, mostly opportunities, a little challenge in there, but challenges that I think that we are primed to take on.
Thank you, Director. I am enthusiastic and confident in your ability to champion those efforts with Council, and I look forward to talking with you about them, and I will let other members have their turn. Madam President, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Councilman Kraus.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Directors.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Wilson had one question. Do you mind if he asks it real quick?
It's always about Bobby Wilson. Of course. No, go ahead.
I apologize. I really appreciate it, because I know I confused everyone, because I left a second ago. Thought I was the one that was going to travel to meeting, but the meeting's coming to me. So I have a couple minutes. I would just like to ask the question I was already talking about a second ago off mic. But yeah. So anyway, thanks for coming forward. Being part of this interview. I'm already looking forward to working with both of you. I know we've already discussed, what I'm really interested in, and we've been having extensive conversations about Sue Murray poll and what we can do there, and just the polls in general. Obviously that's a hot topic with the summer coming up. So I really appreciate everything we've been talking about, and I'll continue that.
You know who used to be the lifeguard at Sue Murray? My son.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then he moved to the north side.
And where is he now? No,
he moved to the north side. Oh, no, he's got a job.
Okay, so I just have one question for Domi, and I'm sorry, for Acting Director Lucas, which is, obviously bridge conversation is front and center, and the number one bridge that I'm concerned about is the Swindell Bridge. And so I've been getting, a lot of questions about that throughout the past. I mean, even whenever I was president of Spring Hill Civic League, we were already writing letters to the city to, what kind of attention can we give to this bridge? When is this going to be rehabbed? Long before, you and I were sitting at a table like this together. So we're all wondering, and I'm wondering, how we can cut down on that 2-year period that is typically given to bring the selected contractor under contract, to do the work.
So there are a number of elements that go into the time that it takes to do something, right? There's time that it takes to review a contract. There's time to develop or review a design. There's time to get sign off and circulate documents. But a lot of the lag has to do sometimes with the steps, if we have redundant steps, or if we have things, for example, reimbursement agreements with PennDOT, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. We do these all of the time. I'm sure council members are aware because you have to vote on them. And every single time it's a non-standard agreement because of the differences between what the state requires and what the city code can allow us to agree to within a document of that nature. So we are having conversations with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to find out how can we standardize an agreement so that we can expedite one very lengthy step of that process. And my understanding is with this specific bridge with Swindell, that was part of the delay, was waiting on a reimbursement agreement and possibly developing a newer one. We have had conversations with the mayor's office and with PennDOT to also talk about what steps within the process that we are now in can be expedited. Choosing to go with a rehab of a bridge or total reconstruction of a bridge, that decision is made based on a number of variables, and one of those variables is whether or not it is a historic structure, and that's something that needs to be determined by external parties to the department. If we kind of read the tea leaves and use our best judgment, that was a really bad analogy. If we use our best judgment and look at examples of bridges that we've worked on recently and see what would likely be determined as historic or not, and we know where we're going to go, then we can skip the step and we can go with what's probably the more challenging process, which is working with a historic structure so that we're not taking as much time waiting to get there to start that process. And so we are looking for ways to expedite the process in ways that will also help us with all of our other projects as well, with the standardization of agreements, with increasing core capacity of our staff. Councilmember Gross asked a few minutes ago about our resources and our gaps, and we have 3 people on the operating budget within our structures division in the city's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. So 3 people that are responsible for over 800 sets of public steps, 150 city-owned bridges, 400 plus retaining walls, and the landslide mitigation efforts and flooding. So there is a real core capacity issue. So making decisions like we did very recently to allocate some of that rapid response money and use it to hire on project managers that can actually spend more money and get contracts out the door faster is something we've done in the last couple months. So a long answer to your question about a specific bridge, but we're looking at the process, and we're also working with our internal city departments, with OMB and with law, to make sure that anywhere in the process, because there's multiple places that there's opportunities for improvement, that we're going after those.
Okay, great. In terms of who you're working with, can you name all the entities that you're working with to make that happen? Like departments, intergovernmental agencies?
Yeah, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, the Office of Management and Budget, the Mayor's Office, the Chief Operations Officer, Law Department, City Solicitor, to talk about what options there are within these documents and within these processes that we legally are able to change. And we've had some successes recently. I can shout out Deputy Director Jeff Scallican for also funding too. So we recently were able to get PennDOT to assist us in getting 100% external funding to the city, where we had a 5% match, which is standard for bridges. For a number of our projects coming online, we're able to reduce that to a 0% city match. And for every dollar that we're able to save on those projects, we're able to reinvest into other projects. And like I just mentioned, sometimes into staffing to support those projects. So we're looking internally, externally, SPC, and we're getting creative about ways to expand.
How were we able to reduce that to 0%?
You're going to have to ask Jeff, but he was able to identify some of that new federal funding that Councilwoman Gross talked about earlier with the IIJA and other similar sources, and identified an opportunity that we were eligible for.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all the work, and I'm definitely interested in continuing that, that conversation. Do whenever anything council can do to do that as well. So happy to work with you and get that done.
I would be remiss if I did not mention an enterprise project tracking software would be really exceptional for our city. And I think that's something you would hear from the leadership of these other departments I just mentioned. An actual program where when you upload the document that you were the first step in uploading, it's got a timestamp on it. It notifies the person who was waiting to look at it, and you can see how long that person has, and they can interface in this system, as opposed to emails, which occasionally get lost, phone calls that maybe can't get picked up because someone's on the other line, and things of that nature.
Well,
And
let's have a
We can't even get our phones working.
Well, let's have a briefing about that software if you're looking to
I'd be open
to do that. It'd be great to understand how that can assist us.
Is he on his fourth or fifth
and then if
question?
we're having a good time.
One question.
Yeah. So in terms of the bridge, specifically this window, when I look at where it's happened right where there's a gasket, where it comes down to one lane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a bridge expert, but I'm just wondering, how can we get to a place where we're sending out the crews to replace that all the time, and doing these little repairs that mean a lot? How do we keep the surface of the bridge in the best condition possible, right? Because if we protect the surface, we protect the structure that holds that up.
You're 100% correct. A $10,000 maintenance could prevent a $10 million project if you do it at the right time.
Where's the software for that?
So there is a software called BMS2 that
just
PennDOT
saying.
owns,
Yeah.
and it does. It is an asset management software. So those softwares exist. The human beings within the city budget do not exist. The city once had bridge maintenance folks. They had bridge inspectors previously, decades ago. Some of the staff we had that recently retired after 40 years of service, and they were most recently with DOMI, started as bridge inspectors. We do not employ those directly today. And so we know what, PennDOT Publication 52 is the Bridge Maintenance Manual, and that tells us exactly what you should do and when you should do it. Operating dollars to do maintenance is something that is notoriously difficult to source. The federal government historically, as we heard from Acting Director Hornstein, doesn't always want to invest in maintenance activities, and similarly, the operating budget dollars are very limited. And so the RFP that's on the streets right now is to have someone come in and to make sure that we are as strategic as possible to get those sorts of things done.
Well, great. I mentioned that strategy on identifying those $10,000 repairs that get us, a lot further down the road, and then investing in that, whether it's our crew or we're hiring, whatever the best option is. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, for that one question.
Thank you, Councilman Cross. Thank you,
No,
Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think someone's here with a hook to pull you off. Thanks, Councilman. So, welcome. Thank you. And I've sort of had a train of thought that came off Councilwoman Gross. So I'm going to start Parks and Rec first. And first, to thank you for your quick response and your professionalism in responding to McKinley Rec and getting the senior programming back up and running. Excuse me. I'm not sure if you know the history behind that or how that came to be, but Lifespan used to operate the senior programming there at McKinley Rec and in Knoxville at a platform they had there as well. And it operated that way for years, and they pulled out 5, 6, 7 years ago maybe, and they wanted to merge McKinley in with Knoxville, and the residents there were not having any part of that at all. They wanted to be where they wanted to be, and so I spent my time to go up and learn about them and who they are and what their history was. And what I found was some of the sweetest, dearest people that I've ever had the privilege to know in my life. The average age begins probably about 80 on the low end and about 95 or 6 on the high end. And they are men and women that have spent their entire lives in Beltz Hoover. They've raised their their kids, their grandkids, their great-grandkids are still tethered to the community, have very, very strong values, and very, very strong relationships with one another, and they just treasure that time that they're able to come together 2 or 3 days a week, just for a couple hours, and just sort of spend their golden years together. COVID was a huge hit to them up there. And when Lifespan pulled out, director, forgive me, Jim Griffin was director then, and I had gone up there and I had promised them that we would not let them fall through the cracks, that just because Lifespan had pulled out, we were going to figure this out and they were not going to have to leave. And I spoke before asking anybody if that was even possible. But I remember we went to Director Griffin and I explained to him what I had done. He said, whatever we need to do, we'll help you do. We'll get it figured out. So they organized into a professional senior unit known as the Bells Hoover City Seniors, and we assisted them with writing bylaws so that they could be professionalized and small games of chance. They got a lease with the city to go in and use the space in a defined way at defined times, and it just, I don't know, I just think it just meant the world to them to be able to have that opportunity there. And then, of course, COVID came and it just shattered everything. And they have not had the chance to be together well into 2 years and probably beyond 2 years now. And when you're talking with a demographic that starts at 80 and goes to 95, there's not a whole lot of years left to be able to spend to be together. And a few have had spouses pass in that time and things like that. So I just say all that to say that I just truly appreciate the time that you took. There were a lot of big personalities in that room, and you know a lot about big personalities, don't you?
A little bit.
A little bit. And but all the emails that I'm not responding to, but following closely, I see everything's on track and people are really moving to get them back up and running and in there. And so I just really, really appreciate what you're doing there.
Well, thank you very much. And I will just say that meeting Miss Marge and hearing the story of the senior center there, it's very clear how important that social connection is to everyone, and that's really what we're about providing. So yeah, I'm glad that we're on track to get those issues remedied so she can they could all be in community there together. Yeah, it's definitely very special.
So if you're painting this weekend, we think maybe.
We are painting this weekend.
So are we just painting white? I was hoping we were going to
No, there's a blue involved.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yes.
Because if I would have spec'd something, it would be something in a blue.
And we ran it by Miss Marge too.
And she likes it?
Yes.
Yeah. Miss Marge is such a trooper. I don't think I've ever met anybody like her in my life. And she's the glue that holds that center together. A lot of the programming, if you will, that comes out of it, and they do choir and they do knitting and they do all kinds of things. But she spends a lot of her personal money to keep them, organized and up and running. And the whole time they've been off, she's kept a phone tree alive. She checks in on everybody like every other day or so to make sure everybody still remains connected, even though it's only by the phone. They are, So I think we agreed on a Thursday, like late in the month, that they're going to be able to be back in there to.
Yes. Yeah. We're definitely going to be continuing to follow that. And I also want to just thank a lot of the work, the heavy lift, the painting is being done by the facilities maintenance division. Rick DiCarlo and his team have really come together to help with
great.
this. So yep.
Yeah. I mean, you really pulled the whole team together, and everybody has just been Johnny on the spot. I really appreciate that you're being so hands-on with having this happen. So, we get accustomed to the directors we get to work with over the years. You begin to build relationships. Ross is from Eltshoover. We had built a really wonderful relationship. I was really sorry to hear that he was leaving, but I like to look at that as an opportunity for new talent and new people to come in. And you've clearly proven yourself that you're great new talent to come in and be able to be at the helm of that department. And you're going to do great things there. And I, for one, am personally very excited to see you there. And you will absolutely have my full support in your confirmation.
Thank you so much, and I don't want to disappoint Council President, but I did just buy a house in your district.
No.
So I know
That's right on Zara.
right by McKinley Park. So that will become
Yes.
my personal local park pretty soon here. But I just
There
want to
goes
say
my
that
vote.
being hands-on as a leader is part of kind of, I like to just know that things are working out, especially at the beginning of something, and make sure our team feels supported in that. And so, whenever there is an issue, something that's come up, and community members are directly impacted by that, I'm always willing to jump in. I think that's the number one reason why we're here is to serve the community, and so that I'm glad to hear that she's happy, and we're going to get that all figured out.
Yeah. McKinley Rec is the heart and soul of activity in the Belts River neighborhood. And Richard Carrington and the amazing programming that he does through Voices Against Violence. And I don't know how many years we've contracted with Richard up there. It's got to be at least 10 more, I think, the entire time I've been here. And I certainly don't want to discount the work that he does. And what we like especially about the way McKinley Rec is programmed is there is this cross-generational interaction. So you have the youngest to sort of the teens to the absolute oldest of the community, and it's amazing to watch them interact with one another and in very, very just kind and graceful ways. And I just think it's a real teachable moment for all the generations that are able to participate collectively there.
Yep, definitely, and we really enjoy working with Richard, Mr. Carrington, and Voices Against Violence throughout the pandemic. They've been doing a wonderful service for the community up there too. It's
amazing.
It's a
what
great
he does.
example, I think, of the work that we do more, holistically around the city to support partners, to support older adults, to support young people and families.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Director, I remember, just to harken back to a previous conversation you were having, that Director Ricks said to me, I asked her a question of what about her position was unexpected, that what she kind of assumed it might be, but it really turned out not to be that. And she said to me that she was so disappointed to see the number of times that we had passed opportunities to do very minor, uncostly repairs that went undone and turned into tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars of projects because we simply didn't do regular ongoing maintenance. Simple stuff, right? That needs to happen when it's inexpensive to do, right? Regular maintenance. So you have quite a charge ahead of you. You oversee a lot, and I guess primarily in my conversation with you, I'd kind of like to focus not so much on the infrastructure part of it, but the mobility part of it. And I remember when former Mayor Peduto was on council, we would talk about mobility. What does it mean to move people in a modern city 24/7, 365 in an equitable way, right? That everybody has opportunity for transport, however they might choose to do that, whether it's vehicular, public transit, pedestrian, or bike, right? And through those conversations, not that I really had anything to really do with it, but then became Mayor Peduto and formed the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. So I'm especially focused, being that I am a big walker and I love to walk, and I try to walk just about everywhere that I do go. I'd like to talk a little bit about just mobility in terms of pedestrians and the fact that we want to be a walkable city. We'd love to promote ourselves as a walkable city. And just talk to me a little bit about your thoughts about the pedestrian aspect of mobility.
It is the building block of mobility, is getting people around with their feet or their mobility device. In our city, and I don't know that this is totally different from other cities, but there are different examples out there. Sidewalks are the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. And we do not have a complete sidewalk network in our city. And as you could expect, having in communities that have less financial resources than others, that sidewalk network is probably in more of a state of disrepair. And so having an equitable system means stepping in where you need to make sure that the system is there regardless of the resources of the community. Something that DOMI has undertaken in the last year that you all approved was making a small change to language and code that previously said that we shall fine the property owner if the city repairs the sidewalk adjacent to their property. And by changing from shall to may, it gave the department the flexibility to make those repairs in places where they're most needed through our critical sidewalk gaps or other programs to not double burden a property owner, already if they didn't have the resource to fulfill that requirement, and then we do it for them, but then penalize them, that was just not going to help anybody. And so I'm really enthusiastic about the potential of exploring an even more robust program for sidewalk repairs. The barrier to having a homeowner fix the sidewalk in front of their house could be resources, financial resources. It could just be knowledge. I think a lot of people don't realize when they're the property owner that they're responsible for the sidewalk in front of their home. And even if they do know, they may not know how to get a contractor. They may not know the specifications. And so I think by enabling and empowering the residents that otherwise would be taking care of that sidewalk, by providing them with better information or maybe even a program where we work together as a city and the property owner to bring that sidewalk into a state of good repair, we'll have a more cohesive network. Planning and data collection is super critical to this because with limited resources, you have to really prioritize where you put those resources. So you're probably aware that the department released our pedestrian safety action plan last year. And so this is something that was built out of a workshop with the Federal Highway Administration a number of years ago that identified high priority and high risk corridors for our evaluation and ultimate investment based on things like how many people are using transit, how many crashes have happened here involving pedestrians. And so having a complete network, being strategic with your investments to make sure that they're serving communities that need them the most, and breaking down barriers to other people making investments that are supposed to be making the investments by providing better information is the multifaceted approach that the department is working on.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that walking is such an amazing exercise for you too, and it's probably the best exercise that you can do to maintain good health and longevity. And I think not just physically, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Some of the reasons that I walk are not so much for the body, although it feels great when I do it. It's what it does to my brain, to sort of release all of that, craziness that
Blame it on walking.
that we deal with here every day of our lives, but it does help to process some of that information and get rid of it. So I think it's just really, really incredibly important. To pay a great attention to that part of it. So as long as we're on the subject of sidewalks and eateries and sidewalk cafes and those kinds of things. I wrote the original sidewalk cafe legislation, I think the first or second year that I was in there, because we were experiencing some problems. It was new. At that time, we were touting a program known as Paris to Pittsburgh. And it was about activating store frontage, nice small tables, white starch tablecloths, flower, rosebud in a vase. We were going to be Paris to Pittsburgh, and it turned out to be anything but that. It was 5-gallon buckets with plastic chain and outdoor lumber and Pool City overstuffed patio furniture. It was madness, and so we tried to put some regulations in place, and they worked for a while, and then we made some adaptations to it to get through a pandemic, and I was fully supportive of them. One just minor sort of unexpected consequence of that has been, and forgive me, I might be wrong, so you can correct me, is that the streeteries are able to remain set up even though the business is not operating at that moment in time. And so there's been a few along the East Carson Street corridor that invite people to hang much later than they normally would. The business is closed, the proprietor is gone, but the tables are outside, and so people hang out late into the wee hours of the morning, eating pizza, drinking beer, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and neighbors are furious that people have not left in an orderly fashion. So just thoughts, if you have any, if not, maybe some research or something you might do in ways that we could mitigate that problem.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is trespassing, if it's
It is
after hours.
trespass. It is absolute trespass.
And, thank you for your collaboration with the updated outdoor dining and retail legislation, and also especially with Allison Harnden from Public Safety and Office of the Nighttime Economy.
Yeah.
And so this is a good reminder that we need to circle back with her and Public Safety overall to make sure that they have the information they need in terms of the location of these activations, in terms of the complaints that we're hearing, in case they're coming to us and not coming to Public Safety or the other who would be the right enforcer for that specific issue. And certainly, from an inspection standpoint, we've talked about this before. We have 9 inspectors within DOMI responsible for citywide inspections of all telecommunications, all right-of-way permits, of which there were 18,000 issued last year, and more. And so we do know that there's a need to expand that force, and especially to expand the hours that a force of that nature is working, because we would go out and we would say, oh, they have a sidewalk cafe that they opened up at 8 p.m., which is within their permit, but man, it's twice the size of what it was at 4 p.m. when I checked it out. Don't think that's happening, but in case it is, having someone who could be there at 8 a.m. to look for the types of criteria that our department is responsible for would be how we could assist directly too.
Usually that person was me. I don't think I have ever approved a sidewalk cafe, maybe one or two maybe, that actually did what they applied for. And then once they installed it, it would be like, wow, wait, this is not what I'm seeing here at all, or what was agreed to. And it's really just math. Here are the numbers, and this is the specs, and everybody signed, and now that's not it. But there's no inspectors to be able to check it. I'm certainly not looking to penalize business in any way, and I want business to thrive and do well. But when you talk about someone's ultimate responsibility to protect from trespass on their property, I would argue that the owner of that property has a level of responsibility in that. So if you want to open it from 6 at night to midnight, and bring your register, that's all well and good. But if you leave at midnight and that remains part of your responsibility, you're just going to have to find a way to maintain it. You can't just have the benefit and none of the responsibility. You have to. So if people are collecting at 4 o'clock in the morning, you're going to need to either pull them in, or you're going to have someone there to stand watch, or find a way to shut it down. But I feel for people that live 2 houses down from Carson Street at 14th and Carson, or 15th and Carson, and Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, there comes a point you just lose your mind. It'd be like, enough already. I can't do this again. You just cannot be out here screaming and hollering and hooping and throwing pizza at 4 o'clock in the morning. You can't. So one of the reasons I wrote the legislation originally, and why we have resisted things like vending and takeout windows and that, is so that there is an orderly exodus from the neighborhood, that when it does shut down at 2, you can trust that by 2:30, 2:45 or so, it has quieted down and people have left. But if you have street vending and open windows, people love making the money to say, well, great, I can sell food late at night. But I have none of the responsibility, because I don't have to open my store. I don't have to provide tables and chairs. I don't have to provide waste receptacles. I don't have to provide sanitation facilities. I can just ring my register and leave everybody else to deal with it. No, you can't do that. You can't. If you want the opportunity, you have to take the responsibility that goes with it. I think it's reasonable. So there.
I like it.
That's all. I appreciate it. And of course, I'm happy, more than happy to support your confirmation on Monday, except, Madam Clerk, I will not be here on Monday. I'm having oral surgery. I'm having my tooth out on Monday. So I don't know if I'll be able to call in my votes. I don't know how to do that. We'll work it out. I knew you would.
You can give us sign language.
There you go. I'll do this on
Yeah,
the
do that,
screen.
and we'll say, okay, count it
Okay.
in.
All right. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you both. I really don't think I have much, because I think mostly what I would say is there's a lot to talk about with Domi. And so I don't want to prolong the interviews, because I could talk about all my issues, but I do want to say that I did put money in for McGardle roadway that I expect to be used as soon as possible, because I think that really needs some work done. I think that there's just so many other things that I could really talk about, but I don't want to. I will talk to you. I'll schedule a meeting with Domi so that we can work through some of the concerns, some of the things that I have that I'd like addressed. But I honestly feel like your time is best spent getting the things done. So to me, that's the most important part. I mentioned that I have some concerns about some of the things that are delayed, some of the projects that are being delayed across the city. And so those are some things I'd like to talk with you about. And then do you foresee, or have you been addressing any of those delays and trying to minimize them as much as possible? Do you want to just mention that a little bit?
Well, I can talk a little bit about one of your high priority projects.
Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about one of your high priority projects if you'd like.
Yeah, I don't
or
want to
not.
make this about me. I want to make it about, in general, the city.
Yeah, in general.
Yeah.
So you're right. Delays, just like I believe I heard Acting Director Hornstein also had a question about project delays. And, there's things that are within our control, which are things like making sure that our staff have the training that they require, making sure that they have the guidance and the materials that they need to be able to be successful with their jobs and clear processes. There's opportunities to reduce delays and get processes or projects on track by some of those high-level conversations with the city solicitor and law and OMB to find out where the process is breaking down on some of the more, documentation. And then part of it is, you're absolutely right, the balance between sort of the workload volume for the staff numbers that we have, and also just making sure that we're communicating where we are. So many times we get questions where people don't think that there's progress being made because we haven't done a great job proactively communicating to the public about what we've been doing. And so that's one of the things that I've really been working on with the department, is that public persona that we've got, making Domi a household name for the positive reasons, making sure that not only for, if you're concerned because your street's getting paved and you can't park there for a day, or you're concerned because there's a big project is coming online and you don't know when it's coming, and maybe being upset with the department, you also know that we're responsible for the 40,000 street lights that are lighting the night for you, and the 600 signalized intersections that got you to work efficiently and safely today. And so by making sure that doesn't decrease delay, but it increases the receptiveness of our residents to why they may experience delay. And in some cases, it may not even be delay. It may just be the nature of major capital project development that takes longer than some people may expect. When you see something in the budget, that probably means that that's the budget year that the project can get kicked off in. And that's the beginning of a process. That could be, talking bridges, that's a multi-year process for design and construction. If it's something that made its way to the capital budget but didn't have much in the way of planning, then that, starts with the community engagement process. And so actually seeing, shovels in the ground could be way after that first year that there's a single dollar that's been applied for it within the budget. And I think that's something that, as a department, I want to make sure we're communicating more to our residents so that people have a clear pipeline of project development, set reasonable expectations for what those could be, and also keep people updated, which is something we haven't done a great job at.
Though I want to just make sure, I'm going to reiterate that I want council members want directors to respond to their calls when we're calling about something. We don't want to hear that there's a workload, because to be honest, we had great communications with directors in previous years, and they were in Act 47 had probably more struggles in terms of staffing than you're having currently. There wasn't a DOMI and a DPW, it was one department. So I sometimes wonder if that's something that we should need to reevaluate, how DOMI and DPW are separated and how they can maybe more act together independently in a smoother process. Because I sometimes think that creating DOMI also pulled a lot of resources from DPW. And both departments are always saying they're short-staffed. Well, maybe if we put them back together or somehow had them interact a little bit differently with one another, maybe we can utilize those employees to the fullest instead of saying that we're all short-staffed. Because I don't think people want to hear that anymore. They know that we made it through Act 47 with less staff, and they're not seeing things getting done. So that starts raising red flags for people. And so for me, I know you have a lot of work and a lot of things and cut out for you. So I've noticed that almost every director that's come before us has been a director or an assistant director that came in under Mayor Peduto. We heard a lot about change, and during the elections and when Mayor Gainey was elected. Tell me how you see your, and I'm thankful that he gave everyone a chance to stay, because I think that was a really good thing, that he could have not done that. So I think it was great and really admirable that he had done that. But I want to know what you think you're going to do, anything differently, either one of you, anything differently than you did under the Peduto administration.
So I think DOMI's in a really interesting position in that we are, as you mentioned, a fairly new department. We just celebrated our 5th birthday in March. We started with 4 people. We now have 104 or so people on staff. So we've gone through a lot of growth and a lot of development as an organization. And I think just by nature of where we are, we have the opportunity to start focusing on the organization as an organization that can deliver our projects in, the expected timelines. I'm very enthusiastic about the new administration and their emphasis on making sure that we have equitable investment of resources. And they're very community focused and resident focused, which of course all folks are resident focused, but really making sure that voices that may have not historically been served and heard are going to get served and heard. And so I think that there's a major opportunity to take that guidance and look at the plans and all the foundational work that has happened in the last 5 years. We have a long-range mobility plan. We have a bike master plan. We have a pedestrian safety action plan, and bring them to life with an even greater renewed emphasis on the historically disadvantaged communities and underrepresented communities.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you for that question. I'm thinking about, what would I do differently? And then remembering that the last 2 years that I've been with the city has been COVID. And one of the most, I think, interesting things about that, I started 5 months later, COVID hit, and our department had to really transform how we did our business. I mean, we really had to change everything. People couldn't come into buildings, and a lot of our stuff happened there. I think coming out of COVID now, and while we're still faced, as I mentioned earlier, with a couple of those challenges, some of the really unique ways for us to think differently about how we do our work, I think include how we think about our presence within our park spaces. We certainly have expertise there. We are programming. We are creating environments for people to come, feel welcome, and have some really interesting experiences. And I think our department can certainly grow into being part of that. I also feel that just recently, all of the discussions that we've been having about youth violence that is impacting our young people, that our rec centers have a space there. We'd have to think about what that looks like, but there could be some creative things that we consider around when we're open and how we're engaging with community organizations that are also connected to youth in those partnerships. One of the things that I think we're also kind of right at the very beginning of is, we've over the last several years, 2 years, we have been securing investments for technology to be built out in our rec centers. And we're just at the beginning of actually being able to see that start to happen because we're back in person in our rec centers. And so that has been really exciting. And I think that's a place where we can continue to talk about the future of recreation and what does it really mean. It's, of course, what we think traditionally of about recreation, but it's also enriching activities for young people, having tech access and creating that equity and access to technology, but also thinking about how that's also preparing young people for the jobs of the future. We know that technology is a part of that. So I'm excited to see that work continue to grow. I think that's a place where we've really, we've had momentum started. COVID, kind of halted some momentum for us in certain areas. The last thing I want to mention is our work that we do with older adults. I had a lot of opportunity to kind of get more connected to that work in just the time that I've been acting. And I think that we're at a really interesting space there too, about making sure that as we think about our healthy active living centers and what those look like in the future, that they're also prepared for the next generation of older adults, and that they're meeting those needs. Me too, I'll be there. But it really is a piece of that. So some of the things we've been talking about is what it means for us to get accredited as with the senior work that we do, because we are the largest serving, 13 senior centers.
Yeah. That's right.
In this county. So we're their largest provider, and we really should be thinking about quality and what we're doing to make sure that we stay, in with the times. So those are all things that I'm excited to bring to the table and to really grow out, in this work in the future.
Thank you. And I just really want to bring up a little bit about the polls Councilwoman Gross talked about. I heard you touch upon it. I really, you know how I feel. I want to see them all opened, whatever we have to do. I don't know why we're not working with, are you working with the universities at all?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Yes,
And
we actually have quite a few guards. I just got a report this morning that guards that we've gotten from Pitt, which is wonderful. But yes, we are
good.
working with universities. We are doing, like I said, I mean, it is, we're right now in like the prime time of translating interest into certified lifeguards. One of our biggest challenges has been finding, I would say, manager level guards, head guards. We've got a lot of new interest, which is great. We definitely need some more seasoned interest, and so we're going to shift our recruitment to reflect that. That has definitely been obvious. But I will say that if it wasn't with the support of being able to have, thinking creatively about being competitive for salaries, that was really important for us. That has made a difference. All of our other part-time positions that haven't made that jump have not been getting traction. So we have been getting good responses to the lifeguard recruitment. And we have, still a lot to go by way of the trainings. So far, things have looked great, strong. But one place that we are looking for is more leadership, more management level folks that can be at our pools. And our goal, our goal is to open as many pools as we can. So we're equally disappointed when we aren't able to do that. And so we have been really, really as proactive as we can, and I don't think it's a secret to anybody that we're trying to find lifeguards. But it is still, we are rebuilding out of COVID. So I also want to be clear that one of the biggest challenges has been that for the 2 years that we were in COVID, we lost leadership. We lost that. We lost the connection we had to people who came year after year to work at our pools, no longer had a place to go and found other means of employment. And that really that really impacted kind of our pool of, recruits and pool of folks that work for us. And our aquatics team, I just want to shout out to them too. They do a phenomenal job of really building community around their team. They prioritize safety and are really, really working hard. I was just out at Carrick High School this last weekend with the lifeguard recruits to see how it was going. We had over 40 kids there. Which is amazing, which is great. And we've been also offering training classes 3 days a week at the Thelma Lovett Y.
And they're free, correct?
And they're free, so that if you are not yet sure if you're a comfortable swimmer, you can join us 3 nights a week to start training, start swimming with our guards. And that's been a wonderful partnership too. So we really are trying to be as creative as possible. And we continue, any support that council can provide. The administration has been providing, HR has been supportive to us as well, to just get the word out so we can get as many recruits as possible. It also is, again, we're equally disappointed that when we can't do, we know how important our pools are for our communities.
Thank you. And then I want to say also the recreation center, the senior center, the healthy active living center staff, they are amazing
They are.
all across the city. They just do a great job.
Very
and,
dedicated
I'm especially
people.
fond of ours, of course, but they all just do an amazing job. And I really want to I really want to expand the work that we're doing with the athletic associations. I've talked about this before and tie in some of the things. I think I'm going to do some legislation around it, so that we can not only expand but enhance those programs, and making sure that we're getting quality programming to our kids. But most importantly, I think that we need to open at least one recreation center, like north, south, east, and west, maybe central too. When I worked in the school district, everything was north. You probably remember north, south, east, west, and central. That's what you thought of this. If you didn't do something in one area, you had to do it in all 5 sections, to make it all fair and even, so and equitable. So, I wish we would think that a little bit in the city. We sometimes don't. We do something in one area and we think, oh, okay, we've done it. No, you haven't. You did it for one part of the city. But I really would love to see something, and I talk about this all the time. I think when our kids go home at night, I worked in the school district, I coached kids all throughout the communities, I worked with you in the East End. Kids everywhere, there's so many kids and families that are hurting. And I really think that it would be so amazing to have a place where if a kid didn't feel safe, didn't feel comfortable going home, that there was a place they could go, but they were met with a social worker or a safe place that doesn't also make them a victim in that place or a target. So I think it would be great to have some place to keep our kids safe, and I really hope that we'll start thinking about how we can do that. And so with that said, I really I have a lot of questions, a lot of things I'd like to talk with both of you about, but I don't want to do it during an interview. I want to thank you both for your service to the city, and thank you for your work that you've done thus far. I am curious about a little bit more about the speed bumps in the city. I'm hearing that we're rethinking those a little bit and doing only 2 per district. I'm hearing a lot of people complaining about this response times for our first responders, and so those are some things that I'd like to, if you want to address them today, you can, but I'd like to have a conversation with you about those and where we are with all that.
One quick note that I would like to mention with regards to our traffic calming program, you mentioned 2 per district. So last year we received close to 200 requests for traffic calming citywide, and I think we did, I said it in the capital budget hearing previously, 13 and 18, I think, between there, projects. And so I think it was 13, because 2 per district was going to be more than we've ever been able to do in the past.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, new program, and trying to grow it. So with regards to, and we're working on a map, because I think it would be really useful for the community to be able to see a map of all the places requests have come in, what the status is for those requests, especially because in order, someone might call in and say, like one of the meetings I was at with you, Council President, Carson Street, West Carson Street is fast, but it wouldn't qualify for traffic calming because it's a state road, right?
Right.
But people won't necessarily always know that. So if we can be better about communicating those sorts of things, then I think that would make me as a resident happier. With regards to the specific tools in our toolkit for traffic calming, speed humps are something that we piloted, I believe, last year at the request and after engagement with public safety folks, because or speed tables are what we're going to try this year. So they're all iterations on the same type of element, which we refer to as vertical deflection, which is the most effective way to slow down people with an engineering design that we have in our toolkit right now. So we did take that feedback and we have modified our designs for the speed humps and speed tables, and we're going to try something new that we think will work even better.
You know what, I told Mayor Paduta we ought to go back to cobblestone roads and streetcar tracks down the middle that slowed everybody down on Fifth Avenue. When I grew up on Fifth Avenue, nobody was speeding back then.
And no paving budget.
Right. So, I don't know. I do think that it's a challenge, and I think that partly why everybody is getting to know Domi as a household name is because you have been so successful in those areas, in the traffic calming areas. Although some people, with all things, when you do something that's, it's either people complain that you haven't done it, or they're going to complain because you have done it. And, if you move traffic from one street, you're moving it to another. You're slowing it down on one street, they're going to, so it is a challenge to make people happy in terms of that, because everybody thinks of things differently, and what affects one, it's all relative, so I appreciate your efforts and your whole team, and I want to thank you both for everything you're doing. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, may I please?
Yes.
I'm sorry. There were two things I meant to bring up that I did not bring up. I want to thank you for your willingness to participate in the Mount Washington meeting as it relates to Bailey Avenue. I know the council president is really excited about that as well, too. When the first speed humps went in, they went in on Muriel Street as part of this sort of shared street, whether it be vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle, or public transit. And when those speed humps went in, I thought, they're going to hang me in Carson Street. They're going to tar and feather me and run me out of town. The people are not going to get what this is about at all. And the exact opposite happened. It started this cascade of requests for speed humps. Right after waste management, I would argue, is first, parking is second, third is absolutely, can we have a speed hump? Can we have a speed hump? Can we have a speed hump everywhere? And they have been highly effective. They have truly been highly effective. And they have helped in a very difficult time. I think post-COVID, I think people have come out of COVID having half lost their minds. When they get behind a wheel of a car, it's just
I
like...
think he's talking about me, but go ahead.
But I think like all bets are off or something. I've never seen such aggressive driving. I've never seen such a almost deliberate disrespect for traffic signals or stop signs. What's a stop sign? I call Bob, and he's in the office, and he'll come out and verify this. When I drive in the morning, I call Bob to say, okay, we're going to count the number of people that run stop signs from the time I leave 18th and Mary and get to this building. And each time I do it, it's like 6 or 7 people. And I don't mean like, maybe I can get through this if it's total disregard. I'm just going to drive right through the stop sign, blow right through it. It boggles my mind. So I really appreciate your willingness and the administration's willingness to come to Bailey Avenue. It does meet the criteria for traffic calming. We've done a number of studies in vehicles and speed and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be hotly debated. There's no question about it. It's going to be very hotly debated. Bailey is a very one-of-a-kind, very settled street. Lots of long-term residents on Bailey Avenue.
Very involved, too.
Very involved. I actually did work for Dr. McCollum, Jen McCollum. I did work for Jen McCollum like 25 years ago. I met her, and so they're very invested, they're very engaged, and they have every right to be angry about what's taking place, because it is such a clean stretch, and it is, again, this world where we've just seemed to have just gone completely off the rails in terms of respect or grace or compassion or just respect of those that live amongst us, and it seems to be presenting itself in a very deliberate and aggressive driver that's on the roads now.
You're right, and the data supports your observation. The number of traffic fatalities in streets in cities has increased, and it has disproportionately affected communities of color. So you're absolutely right that I think the number of crashes may have gone down, but the number of fatalities has increased. So less people on the roads, but they're driving faster. And you're right, we can only engineer so much. We only have so many tools in our toolkit. And, working closely with our enforcement partners, working on education, and evaluating those tools to make sure that they are effective, and if they are expanding their use, is that is the foundation of our work.
The second thing I meant to bring up and failed to, and I apologize, is the 18th Street Signal Project. We're coming to the completion of Carson Street, the PennDOT project. That project was also initiated out of safety concerns. When Allison Harnden came to the city, who's, just like, my muse. I mean, I worship the ground she walks on. She is just.
She's great.
Oh, the experience and breadth and depth of knowledge she has is just amazing. But we were working with RHI and we were working with PennDOT because Carson is a state highway. And through those meetings, I came to realize some data collection on East Carson showed that it was the 6th most dangerous stretch of road in the state of Pennsylvania, and it was based on DUI numbers. And so PennDOT, we collectively, taxpayers, are in the process of an $18 to $21 million rehab of East Carson Street from Station Square to 25th Street to completely redesign, do all the bump outs, the different crossing platforms, the new traffic signals, wayfarer signage, the new road, new crosswalks, everything. Everything that's being done is based on improving safety on East Carson Street. And so we had really hoped that the 18th Street Signal Project was not going to coincide while Carson was still under construction, but it looks very likely, which is the punchline of my question, I apologize, if we could have somewhat of an update on the 18th Signal Project. My understanding is that it has gone out to bid, it is awarded, and we may actually be looking at construction by like summerish fall?
Notice to proceed based on my note is in 5 days.
Get out of here.
So that's why I was
Really?
shuffling through my papers. I do have an update on that one. That is what is anticipated as of the
Wow.
last update. So hopefully
So
that happens.
18th Street is, the first time we passed money, I think you had just joined council, and we had passed some federal dollars that were coming in that were applied to that project. How long have you been here? Yeah.
12, 13 years,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's been a long time that we have been allocating money for this project. Part of the project is to rebuild 18th and Josephine with a traffic signal, which has probably been, I wasn't even considering running for office when public safety, that's when the police station was at 18th and Mary, were petitioning to have Josephine redesigned with a traffic signal. So we're very, very, very much looking forward to this project. I knew it was going to coincide with Carson because Carson is not going to be finished till end of summer, early fall, till it's finalized. But temporary inconvenience, permanent improvement. So one question, I swear to God, I will stop. This is the end of it, I swear. The 18th Street Signal Project is Sarah Jane, Mission, or Josephine, Mission, Arlington, Amanda, but it does not include 18th and Mary, where we have a public safety facility, which is our firehouse, which is right there. I also live in that intersection as a matter of disclosure. We, with the help of Director Ricks, were able to bollard that intersection to keep sight lines open and people not parking up the intersection. And at that time, Director Ricks and I had communication about our capital dollars actually being expended to do bump outs at 18th and Mary as part of this project. It could not be part of the signal project, but our capital dollars were going to fund the bump outs at that intersection. We cannot install a traffic light because we can't have traffic backed up in front of a public safety facility, especially a firehouse. But is that, to your understanding, you can't answer it, you can't answer it. To your understanding, is that the way we are going to proceed?
I would have to check on that
Okay.
specific intersection. I know a goal of our previous municipal traffic engineer was to improve a number of our paint and bollard locations and improve them by making them concrete because the
Yeah.
long-term maintenance costs are lower for concrete and therefore they will be safer because they
Yeah.
will stay in place. And so with that line of thinking, it would make sense that that could be an intersection that would be eligible for that.
Yeah. It would be a sin to do 18th to Amanda and Mount Oliver and hit every intersection but that one. So, I won't put you on the spot, but I greatly appreciate, whatever you can let me know. And I'm getting that look from the clerk, so I got to stop. It's time to go. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want
Yeah.
to thank you both for your willingness to serve and for the work that you have done in the city of Pittsburgh, and I look forward to continued conversations about how we can better the city of Pittsburgh and our streets and our recreation. and everything else in between.
And
right?
everything else in between,
So, can I have a motion to adjourn?
maybe.
Yes. What?
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to, well, who's going to second it?
You are.
Meeting's adjourned.
We're
Thank you,
done.
everyone.
Thank you for being here.